back, everybody, to the Ball and Breakfast Podcast. I'm Patrick, along with Wayne, as usual. Tonight, we're going to cover the movie Air that recently got released through Amazon Prime, covering obviously Nike, very special sports marketing executive, alongside Phil Knight, the CEO of the company at the time, when Michael Jordan was entering the league, and everything kind of surrounding, the rights to his shoe deal and his sponsorship long term. And kind of all started with Michael Jordan in terms of Nike, and really making strides here for basketball. But we're going to go into the movie a bit, talk about aspects of it that we truly enjoyed. We can break down the story a bit better, and just answer any unanswered thoughts or opinions we have surrounding the Nike brand, Jordan brand, etc. So without further ado, I'm just going to turn it over to Wayne to kind of break down his initial thoughts after watching it through, and what he thought of Jordan's decision, and also Nike's, to kind of put all the chips to the center on one prospect.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. So spoiler for everything. I think we'll just go on all out, like try to talk about as much as we can with this movie. So if you haven't watched it, get away from here. Click on our links though, but get away from here, or just listen on and not care about watching it, or have us just spoil it for you. So, I just think it was a really well made movie, right? Ben Affleck. He is such a good director. Like, we for all the knock on his private life with divorces, Jennifer Lopez and all that fun stuff, right? Being an alcoholic, all that. He's a really excellent director. I think his whole thing, like, it's different, obviously, from like a Tim Burton or like a Quentin Tarantino, right? But his style of directing is like it's so well paced. He's such a good at pacing his movies, going from one tidbit to another and kind of carrying along things, and it's easy for me to just comprehend as an individual. It's just kind of coming in who maybe not know what Air is, or even know what the story behind Michael Jordan, the Jordan brand, and Nike, Adidas, etc. Right? Something that's just coming in cold, easy to understand and comprehend, follow along, and also keep you engaged as well. So, I definitely think, solid directing, solid acting, great cast with Jason Bateman. I think he did an excellent job, kind of as that Nike executive there. I think the one thing that I kind of, took away of is that it really just about a story of like perseverance. And, if I think anybody that has gone through, I think that's like the one shared kind of theme here is if anybody's had like this belief in something, whether that it's themselves, whether it's another a pro athlete, or whatever, right? And just wants to like or an idea of some sort, and just is fighting tooth and nail just to get this idea across. I think you'll definitely love this movie because it really kind of shows that, kind of like the whole Moneyball type of movie, right? Where they had this like, well, are we crazy for doing this? Maybe, but we think it'll work, and it pays off great dividends. So, because I think they talk about the impact, right, of this whole Jordan deal. So like, Bateman and Matt Damon, right? They kind of got together and just like tried to push this thing through. I think it was like a 5-year contract worth $500 million or $500,000 annually, to pay to the Jordan and Jordan family, along with some share of the revenue. And they were projecting apparently to get $3 million in revenue in that first year. But they like killed that goal. I think the first year they got $126 million in its first year of business. And today, or this past year, 2022, just looking up the numbers here, brought in $5.1 billion to Nike, which that is 11% of Nike's global business, which is insane, at least in 2022. So overall, I think great story. Love seeing Matt Damon just eat and be a fat ass. And then just obviously love Affleck's storytelling there. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, no, I think for Affleck and the cinematographer, it's just nice that they set the scene in the '80s. I mean, it really made you feel like you were lost it in that decade where I think both of us were born, and kind of looking at the offices, and the rotary phones. You got fax machines and file cabinets and things like that, and just all the culture, like putting on, different 80s movies, songs. You had some Hulk Hogan body slam snapshots too. And, even just like everything from, any sort of fast food or things that were just trending in that time. I thought it was, well done to kind of mash that up and kind of incorporate that along the way throughout the story. I mean, it was like they really put it in your face that you were like in the 80s, which I, definitely appreciated. For what it's worth. But no, the story itself was really cool. I think going into it, I was thinking this could be more about Phil Knight or possibly about Michael Jordan and his family, but it really brought you into Sonny Vaccaro's, uh, you know, mindset, perspective, and as one of the sports marketers, or I would say just top execs overall at Nike at the time. It was, you could just see his undying passion for basketball and understanding the game itself and understanding players and player development, and putting a lot of time going to high schools to like track athletes. And when they got to one of their first board meetings, and at the time it was Nike was a running company and they were all about running shoes, and basketball was just a small fraction of what they were meant to be. And I think they had like only under 10 staff really in the meeting talking about who they could go after with some of the small pool of funds they had available to them to do the marketing. And Sonny was just kind of like doubling almost down on Michael Jordan. And a lot of other folks are just looking at the draft board and just aimlessly pointing at, we'll take this guy because he played at Kentucky. Or what about John Stockton, which I thought was actually pretty funny, because I'm sure if you landed John Stockton or Charles Barkley as clients, that probably would have done pretty well for you. But in the same sense, like, you could just tell Sonny was really fixated on Jordan. Love him going into the 7-Eleven. No secret here that we both love 7-Eleven, have a lot of childhood memories with it. But just talking to the clerk and trying to get his read on who he thinks is a good player. And at the time, centers were everything in basketball, and everyone was so excited about Hakeem Olajuwon. But I think deep down inside, Sonny knew that Michael was special for just his maturity, his competitive nature, his ability to take the big shot and make it. Um, and I think that's what kind of sparked it all. He just got that tunnel vision, like you're saying, with even compared to like Moneyball and Brad Pitt, obviously playing Billy Bean in that whole movie. But no, I think with it all, it was just kind of cool to see him take these different angles towards success. And it was not only identifying the player, identifying a very unique funding strategy for sponsorship, but then also just like trusting his gut, and thinking, okay, we can't outbeat Adidas and Converse in a traditional pitch. Like, we're just not going to be able to stack up, because Michael doesn't already, he already thinks we're like the biggest loser brand of all time. So he's not even going to entertain us at this point. So just taking that trip all the way to North Carolina, doing the road trip and going to his mom's house, and having the conversation with his mom and his dad on site, and kind of sharing that passion and showing why he was so interested in Michael and making him the priority. I mean, I think that just kind of rung true, and it was cool to watch the whole thing unfold. But I thought the whole story, just really did a great job of weaving that whole story together, and giving a lot of twists and turns and ups and downs along the way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like was it Viola Davis who played Michael Jordan's mom, Dolores Jordan, right? That whole idea of the players getting equity or a share of the revenue from these shoe companies. I thought that was a really cool thing that they kind of called out upon. Because I think I think this movie was intentionally made, obviously, but it was intentionally made as the very first movie, I think, for Affleck and Damon's new production company, right? This it's their first movie from Artist Equity, which if the name of the company actually kind of shows what they're all about, they're trying to actually give some of the equity or the proceeds from the movie itself, right, to the entire production crew. So not just giving them some sort of wage, right, but giving like the makeup artist, right, a share of the revenue of the movie or the profits that it makes. So kind of like coinciding with this whole Jordan, as kind of as a spearhead of an athlete who's actually getting a share of the sneakers sales. Because yeah, beforehand they would just give him a wage, like an annual wage, and that's it. But then it's like Jordan and how he exploded, right? Like $126 million first year. I think it's been reported like Jordan's made, over the course of the lifetime, yeah, over $1 billion from, all the revenue share that he's gotten from Nike. So and that's added to his value and has been able to get him, obviously that generational wealth to own an NBA basketball team, although not that well, but own an NBA basketball team and a bunch of other businesses for himself, and be that global brand that he is. So I thought that was all kind of cool, and how that all kind of coincided, I think, with the real life journey, I think, with Affleck and Damon there. But yeah, really just cool overall storytelling just about this whole shoe deal, and yeah, really love the whole references of the '80s back then too.
Yeah. I wonder if Jordan got a cut of the Air movie and now he's getting 5% or something on, all views or all revenue coming in for Affleck and Damon. But I saw that he got 5% on that initial deal. So if you're saying 126 million, I think he got like $6.5 million on top of his $500,000. So, think about that at the time and adjusted to inflation stuff. Like that's a mega deal for a rookie. It was just like pretty awesome. But no, it was really cool. I love the shoe design, scenes as well, like kind of going into the basement and meeting the designer. I believe his name is Peter Moore, but kind of see like his inspiration for everything, like adding more red than was allowed by the NBA at the time, just to be able to have the shoes stand out and kind of match the Chicago Bulls theme, but also to kind of accept any fines that would come from the NBA on the shoe itself to Michael. It's just like all these different creative decisions that came along with this whole build up to this shoe and this brand. I mean, to coin Air Jordan, and I think his agent David Falk wanted to take credit for it throughout the movie, and maybe he had said that like in the call at some point with Sonny Vaccaro, but like just to have that designer kind of have a character, a personality of his own, and kind of come up with some really innovative, just branding overall for Jordan in his first year and beyond. It's incredible. I mean, the Jumpman logo, just to differentiate himself within the brand itself. I mean, I can't say that Adidas, Converse, really anyone else was thinking about that, at the time. So just a lot of cool innovations that came out of, everything around the Air brand. And I mean, it's all history now. That's the crazy thing. Like we watch that back and like, as a viewer, you're like, well, what if this guy doesn't pan out? Like, what if they made the wrong decision? But it's like when you have all this information that we do on how kind of Jordan changed the landscape of sports and sports marketing, it's just like, I don't know, it's pretty impressive, and it was fun to watch back for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny that, like, yeah, you mentioned the whole the Air Jordan like name and like who actually did it, because there's that debate, or I think there's still an unknown of, was it Falk or was it Peter Moore, I think it was, that both called that, or said that they named it right. So I liked how they referenced that in the movie. But then also who was like the main person to in real life, right? Because there's been a kind of a little bit of a quarrel on there too, of who gets the credit of basically being the person that helped Jordan sign with Nike. Because from my understanding, like MJ has said that was it George Raveling or Marlon Wayans' character, since he was his like coach, like he was more of a reason why he joined Nike than Adidas or Converse. And then Phil Knight, he has said that Strasser, the sports marketing exec, or Jason Bateman's character, and then Peter Moore, who designed the shoe, they're much more of the people that were kind of push Jordan over the line with regards to signing with Nike. So, but then apparently the funny part, is that Sonny, right? He eventually signed, got fired from Nike. Apparently, because I think Phil Knight said he was looking at some other business deals, and he had like underneath the table, it was just shady, I guess, business practices. So much so that, yeah, he fired him, and then he joins, guess, Adidas, and then Reebok eventually. So kind of interesting how that all plays. So it seems like everybody's like, no, Sonny didn't do all that work that he said he did. But then Sonny's like, well, like this deal would not have happened if for weren't me, like kind of pushing things along maybe. So all in all, it is interesting. Like everybody's trying to like assign certain people, I guess, that they maybe hold favorable of who is the person that brought the deal over the edge there. But all in all, it's like the Jordan brand's the Jordan brand. Michael Jordan's probably the richest person out of all this, and Phil Knight too. So yeah, it's interesting how that kind of all unfolded there.
Yeah, that seems to happen in like the retelling of most sports stories. I feel like there's always a different take from a different player, different executive on what really went down. And at the end of the day, I mean, they changed the landscape of basketball. As far as Nike goes, it's kind of crazy to think like that was 40 years ago at this point, and that brand is still as cool as it ever was. I mean, Jordan is still probably one of the most prolific basketball brands on the planet, and I'm just kind of like sitting back as a basketball, fan, and also just one that kind of keeps up with sports trends for apparel and stuff. It's like, what do you think it's going to take for the next brand to really step out and do something different? I mean, what do you think that like catalyst might be? I mean, even from like a sports marketing perspective, like are there things that haven't been yet attempted at this point? Because I mean, seriously, I don't know. I mean, can Nike really hold on for hundreds of years at this point? And will there be nothing else to come and knock it off?
That's a great question. That's $1 billion question right there, right? I mean, there's just so many avenues, right? And I think it's cool that LeBron's, I think, playing around. Like, we can definitely knock him for all the his play stuff and his decisions and things like that. But he has built like $1 billion brand, right? With he there's a reason why he went to LA. It wasn't just for the Lakers and basketball. Like, we went there for business, right? So he's having that whole production deals and kind of coming things up, being an entrepreneur in his own right for digital media and media overall. So he's basically starting his own like media empire, along with the Nike shoe deals and things like that, and just being an investor overall. So you also look at like Shaq and what he's been able to do, kind of just like kind of basically negotiate his way with companies to say, hey, I'm Shaq. I got a good following. I'm on, an award-winning, TNT show with basketball and getting that crowd over there. So, happy to just go on random commercials. Take a day out of my a year and just like do one commercial and shoot a commercial for like Papa John's and just have that be played over and over again. And he also owns like a bunch of Papa John's, if I'm not mistaken, and a bunch of other kinds of restaurants and other businesses like that just need kind of a little bit more of a face, but then yeah, he gets that equity. So it's interesting how that's unfolded. I think Peyton Manning's a similar business person as well with that model. So it is interesting how that kind of just has played out. I don't know if we'll honestly see anything to that level of Jordan or that Jordan brand though, just of like bringing in $5 billion right a year just like in shoe sales, like what more can you possibly do? I think with regards to, I don't know, making a movie, or how many burgers can you sell or pizzas can you sell for whatever product you're trying to push. So to me, I honestly don't know if that'll be surpassed anytime soon. Maybe somehow an NIL or some NFT, or I don't know, video game, maybe something like that could potentially do it, but it would really have to just blow things out of the park, I think, with regards to just, I don't know, like having that strong cult following and taking it from there. So, but yeah, this really just goes to show just the impact of Jordan, his brand, the business behind it all, and kind of what captivated entire not just country but world, right? So
Yeah, I mean, he's like a true sports pioneer in terms of just his ability to perform, his cool factor. He was like seemingly the first to really move on so many different industries and commercials and stuff. It's just how do you find somebody to kind of not only carry the torch, but just kind of diminish like the aura and icon that Michael Jordan truly is. Like it's so hard. I mean, we've had Kobe Bryant, we've had LeBron James. I mean, we're walking into like the Victor Wembanyama era at some point, here coming up. I mean, it's tough. I mean, for a guy, across sports, I'm just trying to think like Tiger Woods followed the Nike brand. Shohei Otani right now is with New Balance, but it's like even if Shohei becomes the next, Babe Ruth, it's still baseball versus basketball, and it's also just looking at an international, player who may have a dominating effect on like the Asian market, but it's just hard to like truly know if that can be, globally transcending, like to the just the mass consumer, So it's like it's just so hard. It's almost like you have to find the perfect athlete yet again. Somebody who could do the kind of things Jordan did for as long as Jordan did on. And then they got to have their hands in like everything. They've got to be in sports. They've got to be in media. They've got to be, at some point owners or whatever else in movies, etc. It's just like it's just so hard to find somebody who is the absolute total package like Michael. But I'm just trying to think of sports brand that have even come close. I think to like trying to knock it off. I mean, Under Armour was incredibly unique with the new like layering underneath the jersey, like just to have like a very branded piece of equipment that you had to wear for almost every sport. I mean, Steph Curry, I think, was the second, outside of like a guy like Shaq or LeBron, is like the most exciting and kind of like new era type of player that we hadn't really seen before. A guy who could just not only dominate, from the 3 point line, but he also like had a complete game, was able to win multiple titles. And it's like even that wasn't enough to really get, Under Armour over the hump and as far as basketball goes. So I'm still a little bit stumped. I mean, and one had its mixtape. It had, obviously like that whole trend, and Nike, just threw tons of resources behind it to crush it ultimately. But it's like there have been these things that kind of like jostle for position up the ladder, like whether it's just a completely different approach or with an athlete, but like Nike and Jordan just has stood the test of time, at least for the last 40 years in basketball.
Yeah, and I mean, it definitely is evolving, right? With having an athlete that turns into some sort of a brand or a business themselves. Uh, not to go completely off of athletics, but you also look at someone, kind of like The Rock, right, or Dwayne Johnson, and how he's kind of built his own empire. Start off as an athlete and then went into becoming a kind of a fake athlete, but he's still athletic, right? In pro wrestling, so build a brand that way. But then he went into movies, right? I know OJ kind of went that route, but I think The Rock kind of did it his own way and was a lot more successful in that fashion. So, I definitely see something like that could be in play. Rock does have, I think, like an Under Armour brand, right? That's getting a lot of steam there, and I think it's worth like hundreds of millions of dollars, something like that. I think they've generated there. So, I think that just goes to show just the power of a brand. So if you can build it in one avenue or one industry, right, maybe you can kind of cater that brand to another industry that makes sense to whatever that brand might be. So Jordan, yeah, he has. I think he's in some motor racing and things of that nature as well. And obviously, there's the Jordan brand. Um, and he has some other kind of side businesses, but obviously the Jordan brand is the biggest. But then you look at The Rock, who also has is a part owner, right, of the XFL. So again, kind of going through this whole, hey, I'll put my brand name out there as The Rock or as Dwayne Johnson a little bit more. But then I'm kind of like partnering up with the XFL and bringing it up similar to what Shaq and Peyton Manning have done for like the Papa John's or whatever pizza companies that they own as well. So I think all that kind of building up the brand first, having obviously a winning solid career, being a kind of a good role model or as good a role model as you can be, and then kind of going into different industries that really captivate you. I think is probably the way to go if there is somebody to you know take over that Jordan brand of like highest valued athlete in the world. But yeah, it'll definitely be difficult. And who knows? Yeah, maybe football or soccer, maybe an athlete in that area. We've definitely had our fair share of highly paid athletes kind of come from there. But yeah, it's obviously the U.S. and the Western civilization a little bit. They just have a lot more dollar power in there. So that's definitely where there's a little bit more, I guess, challenges for maybe some Eastern or South American type of like countries and athletes kind of coming from there. But yeah, a global sport like that definitely can go around for sure. So
Yeah, I think your point with The Rock was a great one. Just like thinking about, you know, Rock not only paving the way for, like John Cena and Dave Bautista to also become, wrestlers turned actors who had, a ton of success in their own right, but definitely not the, same level as, The Rock. But it's almost like you getting to this point of like detaching yourself from the major organization and starting to self brand a lot. And maybe, what Shaq had attempted to do, what Jordan kind of is doing, it's like taking yourself out of the organization and being the brand yourself and like selling products in your own name. And, if it's not just with a brand at some point, I mean, it might also be with like this idea of starting your own sports organization or, building franchises that are, player driven, player owned and stuff. And I think that that could be, another landscape that gets, truly tested, in the 21st century. It's like at some point, I'm sure a lot of these, minority athletes that have, been paid to kind of perform, the more and more they want to get their hands on the wealth, like, Jordan did in his time. It's like, hey, well, maybe we stand up a league of our own and, start taking our talents where we know we can also, get our hands on a lot of the long term capital and such. So I don't know. It opens up a lot of ideas. It opens up, um, just a lot of possibilities. And yeah, I guess coming back full circle to Air, it was just cool to see, somebody breaking some very serious ground in the 80s and like almost doing it through their mother, which was just like, for Dolores to kind of sit on the phone and play hardball with Sonny about the deal itself and just not wavering, especially in a position where, they didn't come from wealth. And then like this might be the first time they see, you know, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, so to like play that kind of hardball and win, was definitely cool, and I think that's what also made the movie special.
Yeah. What was who was your favorite character, would you say, in Air?
Oh man, Air favorite character. I mean, we got so much of Sonny that I just appreciated like obviously his viewpoints and everything. Like it was cool to watch him, debate with another exec in the boardroom about the value of players and this and that, and kind of like shame him in front of everybody, and just kind of stuck to his guns and like kept following, those breadcrumbs and just like, made good on every decision that he went after. And, he was a little bit of a maverick. He was a little bit of a loner in the way that he went about his business. But, in some ways you have to kind of respect somebody who's going to kind of make a big bet and kind of back it up at the end of the day. So I just really, yeah, I enjoyed that story a lot. I did find it kind of sad that he didn't have any sort of like love interest or like just really any sort of like companion. It seemed like I just felt like that was his entire life. So if he did not land that deal, I would have just felt like crushed for the guy. But no, I thought the character development there was really well done, and they definitely didn't feature other characters I don't believe in the same like at the same level as Sonny in that sense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely yeah, I really enjoyed Matt Damon's character for sure. I also I think this movie just made me realize like I want to see more of Chris Tucker. Like whatever role he's in, he just like, shines in it. I feel like Silver Lining Playbook, right? Like a movie about mental health and like something like very serious, but he goes in there, he's just like, he's just Chris Tucker. Yeah, he can play himself. That's totally fine, but he definitely adds a comedic relief towards something that might be serious or just a little bit of more flair there. So really liked seeing Chris Tucker as that Nike basketball exec there. But I also just like seeing kind of Ben Affleck being like this quirky West Coast CEO and Phil Knight. Having that haircut, and then he was like looking at Peter Moore. I really liked that scene, right? He was just looking at Peter Moore, who was like in the parking lot of Nike headquarters, uh, uh, on a skateboard, like doing kick flips around Phil Knight's car with like was it like 12 layers of purple paint or something like that. I thought that was just a hilarious scene. So it really just goes like the writing for this was pretty damn good and just funny. Having these little side conversations, but all in all, kind of just adding to the stories, the characters, and kind of just building that all that up. So yeah, I would definitely say Chris Tucker, Ben Affleck. I think were at least yeah for me they were my favorites of this movie.
Yeah. It's crazy how Chris Tucker and Marlon Wayans are in their 50s now. And like, you wouldn't be able to tell just by looking at them, but it's also just kind of puts everything into perspective that, man, they're really that old. But it's funny because Chris Tucker, he is seemingly the same guy in every movie, but it's just, it hits and it's just always kind of refreshing. Like, it brings me back to obviously like Friday and Um, his movies with Jackie Chan, going over my head a little bit. Money Talks was also very good, but no, it was just fun to see Chris Tucker and yeah, definitely enjoy him as a character itself. But I think with that, as far as Air goes, I didn't know if you had any like other final topics or thoughts about it, but in general, I'm kind of yeah, just wanted to hear if you had
Yeah.
any reaction. Otherwise,
Yeah, I mean, hey, go see the movie. If you got Amazon Prime, I think it's still playing in some theaters, so highly recommend it. If you like Moneyball, I definitely think it has similar things, right? Kind of that perseverance story, but still well written. Both movies were really well written, well acted, and great directions. Just overall good time, and yeah, you don't have to be complete sports fanatic, I think, to kind of understand everything that was happening and to fall in love kind of with the story. So, yeah, definitely highly recommend it.
yeah, I think that's true. It definitely can translate to any audience, really. I mean, I think it's just like a kind of a uplifting and fun story. I think from start to finish, just watching him track like Jordan from the start.
Yeah,
Like everybody knows Michael Jordan. Everybody can have an opinion on Michael Jordan, even if you're not a big sports fan. So yeah, I
yeah,
definitely echo Wayne's thoughts here. Like go see it and go ahead, Wayne.
yeah. I was having brunch the other day actually, and then I overheard it was like a 50, 60 year old mother with like her 3 or 4 kids, right, who are all like 20s, 30s, and she even talked about air. Like she had no idea. She had no idea. She actually like gave wrong dates. Like, oh, I think he got drafted like 1988 or something like that, and like kind of completely botched the story. I was listening. I was just giving her the benefit of the doubt, but she was like, "Oh yeah, it was a great movie. It was good fun. Like that Ben Affleck, so fun and all that." So, yeah, again, a lot of people I think can enjoy this movie. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad the Chicago Blackhawks drafted Michael Jordan. I mean, where would they have been without him? So I'm just kidding. Well, anyways, yeah. So go check out Air. This is our full review for the Ball and Breakfast podcast, and we will be back with more on every other sports front we can think of. Stay with us. If you like this, please like this podcast. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram at Ball and Breakfast. We're also on Spotify and Google Podcasts as well, Apple Podcasts. Check us out.